Welcome to the NOFC podcast, everyone. My name is Jay. We are at episode 32, which is titled Hands-On versus Relying on Tools. And I have an extremely efficient guest to speak about that, no other than Jay Wadsworth. In case you have no idea who Jay is, I don't know where you're living, but let me give you a brief little history. I'm going to read it. So, to give him his due diligence here. Jay is the director of Effective Fitness Combatives. He's the lead instructor. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu third-degree black belt, retired pro MMA fighter, 22 years of street cop experience, 14 years SWAT experience, DCJS instructor who developed the new mandatory curriculum for defensive tactics instructors and basic recruits. He's a lead instructor on over 32-day certification courses, 20 80-hour instructor courses, and 4 one-day overview courses from 2016 to present. New York State DCJS certified SWAT operator, 2021. A City of Syracuse case, what's that called, Jay? Jesus, I lost my train
Like
of thought
SME?
there. Subject matter expert. For a subject matter expert, we'll go over that for 2019 to 21. And then he's also a subject matter expert for New York State Attorney General's grand jury testimony in 2020. He's reality-based training instructor 2019 from DCJS, range instructor 2019 DCJS, progressive force concepts code 4 concepts defensive tactics instructor 2016 to 22, Jamestown Police Department SWAT team director of training 15 to 2023, team leader Jamestown SWAT team from 2011 to present. We'll go over that. He's a head defensive instructor from Chattanooga County Sheriff's Academy 2012 to 22, director of defensive tactics for the New York Tactical Association, Officers Association, 2016 to present, instructor at New York Tactical Officers Association 2013 to present. Just went over that. And he's TAC Ops East South 2016 to present. Jamestown Police Department lead defensive tactics instructor 10 to 23, defensive tactics instructor certification DCJS 2010, taser instructor 10 to 16, Medal of Valor he received in 2011, and Officer of the Year 2011. And also, he runs a few different social media sites, Effective Fitness Combatives and Wads BJJ on Instagram. He is all over social media with the amount of stuff that he's giving back to the police officers and instructions. And I saw, Jay, I want you to talk about yourself, but I also want to get into what makes you and what got you into this particular little niche in law enforcement. I will say I saw a little clip that you did not too long ago that in 2025, you helped over 800 agencies, and please correct me if I'm wrong, and within those 800 agencies, somewhere in the vicinity of 2,500 officers you trained. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's how many agencies we had trained in 2025 and approximately how many officers we had trained in 2025.
That's awesome. All right, so Jay Wadsworth, you're from Western New York, or at least that's where you did your police career. Is that where you grew up as well?
Yep, I grew up there as well.
And what got you first into law enforcement, and then secondly into, if I'm assuming it's going to be jiu-jitsu first?
Yep. Actually, it was law enforcement, then MMA into jiu-jitsu. So it was kind of backwards compared to what most people think. But, I played competitive soccer, collegiate soccer as a kid growing up. And when I was getting ready to go into become a professional, I wanted to do some sort of thing with law. And I was leaning towards becoming an attorney. And then after the first couple of years of school, I was like, I don't like sitting at a desk and I don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again every day. And so I ended up deciding to just do 4 years of school and then go into law enforcement. So I went to the academy. It wasn't until like early 2000s, like 2003, 2004, I went to PPCT instructor course, pressure point control tactics instructor course. And I left that course feeling empty. Like, this isn't probably going to be what's going to save me if I get in that fight on the street. And I had a little bit of wrestling background, but I wasn't like a super good wrestler in high school. I only wrestled through like ninth grade because I played soccer the overwhelming majority of my life, like all year round, between clubs and fall soccer for sports. So then I was like, all right, I need to start learning how to fight. So in Western New York at the time, there were no jujitsu schools. There was one guy that was like a purple belt that was teaching some jujitsu. So we just kind of got like some of our friends together that were good wrestlers, and we just kind of started like our own little like training and wrestling slash MMA fight club. Basically, we called it Jamestown MMA. And then we just started traveling and going to seminars and learning jujitsu and how to fight and all those types of things. So that's kind of where it started. And then, you know, some of the guys I was training with, one of the guys that was a state police officer, Josh Roth, he lived in our area. Him and I kind of connected, and we just started training together, and we kind of came under the Rob Hugus branch, which a sergeant in charge of the academy, like physical standards and DT for a long time. And that was just kind of like, someone I looked up to for quite a while. And it was just constantly learning how to train and fight and, go to seminars and places because we didn't really have a direct black belt to be underneath us. So I started fighting a lot of MMA fights. They're unsanctioned first, like on a reservation. And then I started to fight some sanctioned AMI fights and then ended with some sanctioned pro fights.
Oh, very good. So how long did you end up fighting for then? Which is how many fights did you have?
My first sanctioned AMI fight was in '06. My last fight was in 2012. I fought five unsanctioned fights from 2004 to 2006 on the reservation in Salamanca.
Hmm. So I mean, either way, no matter how you put it together, 8 years you did some fighting at some competitive level. That's pretty
Yep,
impressive.
yep.
And
Um,
I'm assuming that taught you quite a bit um, in regards to transition that over into law enforcement. Correct or incorrect?
So I don't think that taught me the transition to law enforcement. I think that what that taught me was how to fight, how to like control your emotions in the fight, understand
Mhm.
how to control another human being. I think that's why like my jujitsu, I can play both the bottom and the top in jujitsu. I like the guard. I like being on the bottom and playing in the sport aspect of it. I would never want to do that on the street. It's just not the right environment to do that in. So I think what really helped me was more my MMA style grappling and my MMA style mindset of, hey, we need to be on top here. Striking is just as important, and knowing how to defend against striking is probably even more important than just straight like jujitsu skills. Now, putting them all together and then understanding like the environment and the use of force of law enforcement really helped me with that integration. Super proactive cop. Uh, was fortunate enough to be in areas where I was making ton of arrests and getting into lots of resisting arrest, activity, combative fights, those types of things. So I started taking what was working and then kind of analyzing it and being like, okay, what worked? What could have, we got lucky if it was opposed by a weapon. Would this have worked? Would it have not? And that's kind of how I figured out the integration of how to build like the curriculums for DCGS and EFC was, how do I take the sports of MMA, jiu-jitsu, and wrestling? How do I take those fundamentals of controlling a human being? Okay, minimize damage from strikes and then be able to control them. How do I take those and then integrate them in what our goal is in law enforcement, which is control to custody at some point? And then understanding we have a use of force, and then everything can be opposed by weapons, size differences, multiple suspects, because it's not a sterile environment of the sport. So it goes way beyond just like, hey, get good at jujitsu or get good at just wrestling and then be good on the streets. There's a huge integration after that. Now, I teach in a triangle. So you have to understand those skills, how to control a human being, how to defend against strikes. Those are skills that you have to know. Then I take the concepts and principles of the position or incident that we are in, and then make you a problem solver to be able to add the tactic. So it's kind of like teach the skills, teach the concepts and the principles, and then allow people to become problem solvers to add the tactic, because one move doesn't work every time in police work. We don't have referees, we don't have size, weight classes, and we definitely don't know what weapons they have most of the time or what scenario we're going to be in. And we always have weapons on ourselves. So just depending on their level of resistance can change things as well.
That's interesting because you're talking, and this is all culmination of, now it's 2025. So this is from basically, let's say, 2004 until, that's 21 years of information that you're gathering. And now I'm assuming, based on a little bit that I know about you, is each year or each day or each week, whatever that may be, you're trying to implement more beneficial tactics that officers can utilize to help them succeed on the street. Um, and I, you had mentioned a few things that you did on the road, that you're a pretty proactive guy. So let's go back to that 2011 year real quick, where you got the Medal of Honor and the other award. What was that all about? Just explain that if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
So the Medal of Valor was, I was patrolling kind of a really uh, not so nice area. And it's completely like a non tactical, like Medal of Valor and Officer of the Year award. It was more of like, people think that we just go out there and fight people and whatever. Like, realistically, we go out there and save lives. And protect people, right? So it's kind of more along those lines. And I was about 4 blocks away and I saw a whole bunch of dark smoke going up in the air. And so I started driving towards it, and it was a road we called Banana Hill because it was 1 block, but it was like down and then right back up. And right in the middle of that valley was a complete working structure fire. And being a little bit seasoned down the job in 2011, I parked at the top of the hill because of knowing that the fire trucks were going to block me in if I drove right down by the house that was on fire. So I parked up at the top of the hill and kind of ran down in because there was a male from the neighborhood, or I don't even know who it was because he left like prior to all us getting his name and interviewing him and that kind of stuff. But so there was a male standing in the front yard of this house that was a working structure fire, and he's pointing in there. He's like, "Someone's in there. Someone's stuck in there." And he had broken English, so it was hard to understand. So I took off towards the house. And if you're looking at a house from the front, if you're picturing in your mind like facing a house, I'm coming from the road. I'm going to go to the right side of the house because the porch and entrance was offset. And you go up like 3 or 4 steps and then into a screen door, which was a foyer, and then a door inside that, which would get you into the access to the house. So I open the door of the front door, get get the door open eventually, because it was locked to get into the main house, and there's a lot of smoke and fire. Like, it's a functioning structure fire at this point. And as soon as I open the door, there's a lady laying in front of the door, and she only has one leg, so she couldn't get up and reach the door. And so I grabbed her, threw her over my shoulder, and then like sprinted out of the house and then up the hill. And as I'm doing that, the house starts to like, there's tons and tons of oxygen in this house. So it just started like the oxygen started blowing up and going. Electrical wires were falling from the house onto the street, and ended up running her up to the top, meeting up with fire and EMS as they came. And then she obviously had to go to the hospital, and then I had to get checked out and those types of things as well, just from the smoke inhalation. But that's kind of like the long and short of it. Um, when I got the Medal of Valor, like I told the chief and the mayor, like I just did what every other cop that was in the area would have done.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that was just, put your big boy pants on and go pull her out of there. And it's kind of funny because like as we were running, I remember seeing in my face, my head was, her face was like all charcoaled back, and she had like gray hair, but it was all charcoaled back. And on top of her was like some sort of object that I didn't really pay attention to at the time. And it ended up being an oxygen mask. And how the fire had started was she had put the oxygen mask up and was smoking a cigarette. So
Oh, jeez.
sometimes we don't make great decisions in kind of our own downfall, but that was that's my Medal of Valor and Officer of the Year award.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You know, you say, and I tend to agree with that. Any other police officer would have done the same thing. I think that's probably 95% true. There are some, sure you've seen them, some that kind of steer away from that and want to stay away from danger. But I agree that almost any other police officer would do the same thing. So it looks like Jamestown is I don't want to say small. What does the department consist of as far as officers? Anywhere between 50 to 60 officers. Is that about right? On
No, so
regular
like when I
or
first started there, it was like 85 to 90. And then when I
oh,
left, it
okay.
was 65. Um, it's nine. I always explain it this way. It's 9.1 miles of just, there are certain little neighborhoods that are nice, and it used to be a super nice like city, and there are still like really good people that live there and stuff. Then downtown they're trying to redo, but it's just a section 8, unfortunately, just like any of the upstate or western cities, Niagara Falls, Utica, any of them, they're just very poor. It's a very
Yep.
poor city, and there's lots of public assistance, and there's lots of you know 8 to 10 story buildings that just all consist of multiple housing units inside it. And unfortunately, it's just become a drug haven. So, like when I was in the drug unit, I wasn't a TFO, but one of the guys in my unit was a TFO with the DEA. And the DEA guys were like, they hated coming down to our city, but they had to come to our city because our city was having more meth supplied to it than both Jamestown or both Buffalo and Rochester at the time. So, like, everything was running through Jamestown as far as meth in that whole Western New York district. And it was just, we would get all the gangbangers from like Buffalo and Detroit or Buffalo and Rochester that would come down, and it was kind of more like the younger reckless guys. And I think that was why the crime was so bad, and the give grant stuff was so high and all of that. So it was like, our 3 to 11 shift probably operating with like 4 to 6 guys on the road. Our minimum staffing was 6 per shift, with different zones, but like uh, 2 of those people were inside jobs. Someone had to work the command desk. Someone was working the holding facility. So minimum
Yep.
on the road was 4, which was not a lot when you have 4 zones. And so it was 4 to 6 if there was no other specialty units on at the time. But a 3 to 11, easy 3 to 11 summer would consist of 85 to 100 calls a shift, running that with 4 to 6 guys. And you're just humping.
Yeah, all day long, literally. So then at what point I know you start becoming a part of the SWAT. Like, how does that integrate between your MMA and your jujitsu, your wrestling, all combine into like what is that transition look like? What makes you get into the police end and want to not only get more into that, the SWAT and defensive tactics, but is there a catalyst that pushed you into that in the police world as well?
Yeah, I think just like always being a competitor and wanting to be like doing the more tactical, awesome, good things. The guys are fit, they're shooting, the elite tactical officers, and just pushing myself to get there. Obviously, fighting, being in really good shape, hands-on skills were great. To be honest, when I went onto SWAT in the beginning, like my range skills were average, and it really opened my eyes to how much better I have to be on the range. So I really started then training that aspect of my career too, of shooting, starting to shoot, every week, starting to add in tactical shooting, moving, that kind of stuff. And that's where I really started to integrate more together. I would say the proactive policing roles were where I saw how to build curriculum for combatives, because you're doing it every day. You're running and fighting with people every day on the street. There's uses of force every single day in that city. You're fighting with people, taking them into custody, drawing your gun on people, clearing buildings, chasing people, all those types of things on a daily basis, right? So lots of data to pull from, lots of experience to pull from. Then you take the sports side of things. How do I integrate that together? And then what the tactical side did was I really just decided to be like, hey, I want to be the best SWAT guy that I can be. But what that did is like, hey, SWAT isn't just all cool, fun and game stuff. It's like the operational planning of it, the training of CQB. There's so many ways to do that, and that's changed so many times over the course of my career. Like I can. I could probably jump in with most teams and be like, hey, how do you clear? And after them watching them make 1 or 2 runs, probably just run with them. Whether that's just violence force action, dumping in rooms, cross button hooks, splitting doors, going to the unknown, going to the known, stepping center, whatever it is, clearing his cell, door thresholds, any of those things. So like I really started really training and going to a bunch of different trainings to get better, shooting all the time. We had a really good culture on our team. A lot of guys that wrestled in Western New York and Western PA area, big wrestling pedigree. So those guys were all competitive as well. So we would push each other. Everybody was fit. We were pushing each other constantly to be the best in the obstacle course every year, best in range on all our qualifications, developing new curriculum on the team, new SOPs, those types of things. And just took the team from to the next level. But like the guys that we learned from initially gave us that base, right? They gave us that initial base to want to do that. Like my SWAT commander, when I came on initially was a lieutenant, and he was a 20-year military guy, competitive, like a wrestler as well. And he was really the one that had brought me onto the team first, and he wasn't there very long. And being from a Democratic city, we never thought when he put in for a chief's job, the chief's opening at one point, that he would get it, and he did. And it was a blessing for the department. It was a blessing for the city because like I didn't know him super well at the time, but because I was on a team for a few months while he was team commander, when he got promoted to chief, he ended up pulling me in and saying, "Hey, I want you to change the defensive tactics program. We don't care what DCGS is doing. It's not functional. It's not reality. And go build us a curriculum that we can implement at the in-service level and make everyone good at." So that's kind of how all that stuff came full circle. And then he supported that whole mission of building that and building that. That was my first curriculum build was for the city. And then we started implementing biannual and then eventually quarterly training. And we started being like taking down the walls of the silos. So taking down the range walls, taking down the DT walls, and then taking down like active shooter, and then what became reality-based training, and all implementing together and all being on the same page, so that when guys were going to reality-based training, they were getting tested in both range and DT skills. And when they're going to range, they're also working close quarter stuff. When they're DT, we're also working weapon manipulations and movements with training guns. We're all on the same page. And once I saw that come down, those walls come down, and we started building a reality-based training program off of the states to kind of be like, how do we test our, how do we test our officers in what we're teaching them to put them under pressure right away? Because that's where we're seeing things fail, is when officers are getting pressure. They're not getting enough pressure, but it's got to be structured. The first couple reality-based training ones where we pressured them really close and we put pressure on them and we would wrestle them and we'd take them down during a reality-based training, like force on force. We saw a bunch of training wheels fall off the LCDs. The competent level officers, the training wheels are falling off and we're helping them putting back on. Even the high level guys were having some miscues. And then after like 4 or 5 sessions, the LCDs were competent. The competent guys were crushing it. And the guys that were crushing it were just elite. And it was like, okay, so now we're taking down the silos. So if we have 4 ranges a year and we have 2 to 4 DTs a year, and then we're adding relay-based training in there a year, now they're getting, monthly training in some fashion across the board. And it was just game changing for the department. That department uses force multiple times a day. Okay. And you don't ever see them on the news. Okay. And the reason being is because the training has set the pace for those guys to be successful in the street. And then that's kind of how like DCGS kind of contracted me out to build the curriculum for them. And I didn't do that alone. I went to all the major academies and pulled the guys that were training jiu-jitsu and wrestling, and preferably guys that were on SWAT teams that were also doing that. And there's like 12 of us, and we sat down and we built out a curriculum, and that became the new DCGS standard, and currently is, and working through the updates on that now with EJ. And then in 2022, I built the EFC curriculum, which is just a more modern DCGS one, which is what those updates will look like as well. And it's one of those things where, like, you know this from being in New York, and you were with the state police, correct?
Correct.
So
Yep.
I don't know how exactly how the state police one works, but in New York, if you go to a certification course, say in 2010, I went to the DCGS DT course, that cert's good for the rest of my life. There's no updates. I don't have to go back and show proficiency in training. I don't have to go back and recert. So, like, the program was just so old when we looked to break it down. That was one of the things that we said is we're going to do updates every so many years. Right now they're doing a great job of DCGSs of updating all the basic academy, like, lanes. So they did DT first. Right now they're working on range. Elts and Jake Young and Ben, those guys are crushing that over there. But here's the thing with those guys too is their their main strength is range. Where, like, I would say my main strength is the DT world, but, like, I'm also very proficient in firearms. I'm very proficient in tactical moving and shooting. I'm very proficient in CQB, being on a SWAT team that was hitting somewhere between, um, you know, 50 to 100 and some details a year. That's super busy for a part-time team, right? We're super busy training a lot and just understanding being well-rounded. It's almost like, hey, when UFC happened in 93, jiu-jitsu crushed everybody. Your boxers, wrestlers, jiu-jitsu guys, taekwondo guys, karate guys. They're all just self-sufficient in their own lane. Now, if you look at mixed martial arts, they have to all be very good and proficient in stand-up wrestling and jiu-jitsu. The guys that are only good in one don't make it very far or don't last long. Right. So that's how, like, I look at, like, police work. Police work shouldn't be I'm a gun guy or I'm a DT guy or I'm a PT guy. It should be your all. Now you might have your bread and butter, but you should be extremely proficient in all those phases. And I think that's what really helped me uh in my career, you know. And then on the SWAT aspect and the shooting aspect, I got to give it out to, you know, my buddies at PFC out in Vegas, Doug and Brian and Travis. I spent weeks and weeks and weeks of the year training with those guys, to the point where I was initially just helping them do the combative side of their programs because I was working for Chad Lyman at C4C at the time, who is a company that is kind of part of PFC. PFC is a group of companies. So I would be down teaching for him, and then I would help with the combative side of their gun courses for, their FSOCs for their military units, their safeguards units, those types of things. And then I was like, hey, I have good gun skills too. But then I would run next to those guys and be like, man, I got a lot of work to do. And, Doug was on the teams for 8 years, and Trav was a full-time SWAT guy for 14 years in North Las Vegas. So, like, I started spending time with those guys and running to the point where, like, I was actually going as an adjunct instructor and teaching with those guys on that gun side stuff now and the military guy side stuff. So I just made myself well-rounded, but it wasn't just like I was initially good. I had to put the
Yeah.
work in. I had to, I sought out really good guys. I sought out really good training, and then spent multiple weeks, a year around those guys. And then I would come back and spend that time around the really good guys in my team. And we just kind of pushed each other to the next level. That team was really close, and we just all had, like, our own lanes that we were solid in, and we just pushed each other to be good in all those lanes.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I want to give a huge credit to that chief that came in and implemented that policy and had you come in and do that, because without him doing that, who knows not only where you'd be, but where policing and defensive tactics would be here in the state of New York, to be honest with you. Like, that's huge. And that's, I obviously, how would I know that story, but that's pretty cool that he came in and had you do that. Now, when you talk about um, specifically, I believe you were referencing Jamestown, where you have your trainings multiple times a year. See, in New York, it's pretty much you go to the academy, you get refreshers and services, but there's nothing like what you guys are doing. And it's
Yeah.
quite honestly, it's difficult for New York State police to do because they have, a few thousand police officers and it's hard to schedule that. But here's where your training comes in, and us as I say us, but the current members on the off-duty status, those are the guys that now should be coming to you to look for that continued education so that they can be, because for the state police, not that it's any more important, but a lot of times we're going hands-on with guys that are in the middle of nowhere, miles away
Yeah.
from any backup. So like having hands-on and being able to control somebody is paramount, I believe, on our job and any job, but specifically out there where you're in the boonies.
Yeah, and I'm obviously have a lot of good friends that are in the state police currently and retired, and like they have they have their own ideologies of like, hey, we could have done this troop by troop and district by or like district by district. Just they didn't have the backing from the upper administration to do that, right? It was, oh, people will get hurt or whatever, and they're like, people are going to get hurt if their bodies aren't conditioned for training, right?
Right.
But if you train safely and you don't push them and you don't come in and just beat them up every time, you have to understand like, hey, can we come in and beat people up every time in DT? Sure, but what are we proving to them that we can beat them up? We already know that. So we're not making them better. How do we start getting them to want to train more? And that's conditioning their bodies slowly. But if we don't put them through some of these drills and we don't get them training regularly, their body's just not conditioned for a fight. And then that fight happens on the street. And that's what happens. We have injuries on the street. We have officers losing their lives or getting injured. Suspects are losing their lives and getting injured. When a lot of that stuff could possibly be minimized due to a better continuous training model. Yeah, EFC, the thing I like about EFC, and when we built EFC out, was it was going to be a full spectrum combatives course. So, we talk about ground defense, we talk about punch defense, we put in skills, we talk about one man control, we talk about one man takedowns, team control, team takedowns, weaponry, a whole bunch of weapon entanglements, retentions, when to draw, moving and shooting, platforms, those types of things. And, most shootings are what, 0 to 7 feet, low light conditions and around cars. And so officers have to train more like athletes. And this is where we say the PT guys got to come in. In the academy, they get PT every single day. You may only get 80 hours of DT and 80 hours of range in that academy. So who has the most influence on them throughout the academy? Your PT guys. If your
Yep.
PT guys run them, say, long distance runs twice a week, and twice a week they're doing sprinting, agility, and proper movements that you want them to do on the range or like in these combative environments, and then one day of combative conditioning, they're going to be way further ahead when they get to the DT and the range portions, and they won't forget that now. They've done 6 months of these exercises rather than just doing calisthenics and long distance runs. Like that has benefits, but what is job related tasks that we can do to benefit our guys better in the PT lane? PT's been being done wrong for a long time in police work, right? Because it just
Yeah.
doesn't translate over. How do we get it to translate over into these other lanes? And that's where we have to take down these silos. And, when we had full aspect of like, hey, how are we going to be doing things more? Um, that was the good thing at like the Chautauqua County Academy is the guys that were doing the PT were um, guys that were also teaching DT and also teaching range, right?
Yep.
So that now everyone's on the same pace of, hey, how do we integrate this stuff in differently? And it was a really good, hey, we have to work with other agencies and other departments. We have to work with other instructors in different lanes to be on the same page, and I think like Elt's and Elt's friendship and my friendship kind of came. We worked on opposite ends of the state, right?
Yep.
He's a gun guy, primarily, versus I'm teaching the DT lane stuff primarily. But we talk about like, hey, what's the weapon manipulations we're using in close? How are we delivering contact shots? Like, how are we moving out of space? Right? If we're teaching people to move, they need to teach people to move on the range. How are we doing that together? So we talk fairly frequently of like how we're integrating these things in together so that we're kind of cohesive in those two lanes because they're going to see those guys on the range and they're going to see us in DT, and it should have crossover. It shouldn't be completely separate.
Yeah. Now, circling back around to something you said a few minutes ago, which is, the more we train, the less likely there is basically for injuries, not only to the officers, but to suspects. And that's basically what is a good segue into the actual title of the podcast, which is hands on versus relying on tools, relying on our tools. Tools meaning what we have on our belt, right? You have your pepper spray,
Correct.
your handcuffs, you have your gun and taser. And I don't know of any police departments that still carry the baton, but some type of a stick. But I think that's one of the biggest problems in police officers that aren't confident enough in their physical fitness and defensive tactics techniques is that they have this tendency to rely on their tools. I think it was you that posted a video the other day. I think it was a female police officer that was trying to arrest
Yep.
somebody that was approaching them, and before she even made contact with them, she had handcuffs out, almost as if it was a weapon. And once you go hands on, you're lost. Now what are you gonna do? So one of the things you said is obviously first get that person into a position where the cuffs are appropriate before
Yeah.
you pull them out. It's almost like, back in the day, I was my parenting was old school. You had the dad that would come out and he'd snap the belt. Like, if you don't listen, this
Oh
is
yeah.
what you're gonna get. Right? So
Yeah.
you're kind of like you're warning them. These people on the street don't give a shit about that. You have to efficient. I like your word efficient. You have to be efficient when taking somebody into custody. Um, and I know you talk a lot of what I want to get into is your curriculum now, and because some of the things that you are teaching, simple things that we don't think about. Head control, how just pushing the head offline creates such a better position for you as a law enforcement officer, because once that head goes out of alignment, you have much more control of somebody. And one of the quotes you posted the other day, I think is a very training doesn't test decision making. It's just choreography. That's one of the things you say, and it is. And until you put yourself into enough positions, enough circumstances, everything is just choreography, and
Yeah.
that is where I think your training comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you
I always tell people in the 40-hour certification course, like EFC is built so after they leave, they have a full video library instructional. So while they're in the course, they can review at night. If they're having trouble with something, they can review when they get back home before they come back the next day. And then when they leave, they have that video library instructional at the tip of their fingers. It's on an app on their phone. They can have it on a desktop. They can review it before they're teaching it. They can review it before they're training it. From just basic skills all the way down to like the weapon-based entanglement stuff. So like we know that we can't build tacticians in 40 hours. Okay. But what we can do is we can build what the concepts and principles are. We can bring awareness to things. We can give them the systematic system of how it works and why it works so well. And then they have to become problem solvers. And by the end of 40 hours, we start to see them problem solve because of the way the system is built. And then the skills are going to be something they work on over time when they leave. Same with just a practitioner. We get as many people come to the course that want to just be practitioners and not even instructors, just because the curriculum has shown so much efficient and efficiency on the street, right? So no, I'm not going to be teaching, but I wanted to learn the curriculum, and the curriculum is a systematic system. It's not like here's a move, here's a cool move, here's another cool move. No, everything plays into the next role. When I'm doing something on the ground and getting punch defense, that works the same as I'm standing up in a weapon retention grab, right? Because it really comes down to a series of like 10 to 15 skills and then a set of 5 to 6 principles with underlying concepts in those incidents. So like what we do is we show them what's happening and how to slow that down. If I just go and be like, okay, here's how to do an armbar in jujitsu, and you go practice that armbar on a guy that gives you no resistance, and you do it 1,000 times, you don't got to think about how to do that armbar, and you're going to be really good at it. But the first time you get really solid resistance against someone that might be bigger or stronger than you, that armbar is going to fail. Now, if you don't leave when you leave after those 40 hours and you don't train that for 6 months and then you try to use it, that's going to fail, right? That's why everything has to be based on what are principles and concepts. And then we have to build skills and add tactics after that. People have to become problem solvers. So, for instance, the layout of the program, feeds off the next module. So if I use, and I did this wrong in the beginning. When I first built this in 2009, I did this wrong. I did it backwards. And around 12, I started to see like, why am I have to constantly go over here and fix these guys or tell them, wait, you'll see that in the next block. Like, why am I, well, I'm doing something backwards. So take, for instance, takedowns and ground control. We used to always in the Jiu-Jitsu Academy and in DT teach the takedown first. Okay, so then where are they going? They're either taking them down and then just moving and stopping the rep. So they're not finishing their rep. They're not seeing where to go or sequencing from there. Or they're making a bad condition from something they've already trained that we don't want them to do. So I said, hey, let's work the ground first, almost like on a house. Let's build that foundation, then we'll put the walls on. So I started doing ground control first. Now, the very next module, the next block they come in and learn is takedowns. But every time they take someone down, they should end in a position of control because they already know them. That also allows them to start to see principle one is awareness. And under awareness, we always say, if you can be aware of things, you can then anticipate. And anticipation is better than awareness because anticipation is offensive. But if you don't know what to be aware of, you can't anticipate. So now as I take that guy down, if I know if he goes to his side or flat, I can automatically start to extract in arms. If he lands on all fours or his stomach up, I can't extract arms. I have to now work that position first. So if I take you down and we know as you're falling, almost always and never a bad word to use, but a high percentage of the time, the far side hand always posts on the ground to stop their face from hitting the ground. Well, when that occurs, they're already giving me inside control and A grips versus B grips. So I should have an arm behind their back before they even know what they do if I know how to sequence that. If they land on their side, I can be going to leg drag because they're on their side and they're giving it to me. If they land stomach up, I'm on a knee on top position. If they land stomach down, I'm in a low mount inside position right away. If I can't get inside position, then I just win the back of the elbows. So every time we take them down, however they land, you're going into one of those positions. And if the guy doesn't land exactly the way you want him to, then you go to maybe lands on all fours, then break him down and then into one of those positions. So now they're sequencing the events of how the arrest actually occurs versus do the takedown and stop. And then later we'll do the ground control, but we didn't do it going in from a sequence. And so once we started doing it that way, the students got so much better by the end of 40 hours. It was crazy. And just those things of like, hey, if they're stomach down facing away from us or on their side, we're winning inside position. I'm coming inside the arms to get double wrist control or A grips versus being over the top where I'm high, I don't have control. And anything a suspect does to be offensive when he's on the ground facing away from you is bringing his elbows inside. Okay. If I'm flat laying like Superman on the ground to get up, I have to do what? I have to bring my elbows inside. If I want to reach for a weapon, I have to bring my elbows inside. Okay. So why am I chasing the hands and allowing him to beat me inside? Just occupy inside space and then don't chase the hands. Once you start winning inside space, you're ahead. You're now anticipating and you're occupying. You're being what we call offensive tactics instead of defensive tactics. And that's why we're called a combatives program and not defensive tactics. We can be offensive in combatives. We don't have to always be defensive.
All right, I want
So
to bring
those are
up
the
some
types of
obvious.
things that I think people are getting that really are being beneficial.
Good. That's awesome. I want to bring up some obvious variables that I want to talk about. So, do you obviously in your courses you have a variety of skill sets. Not only do you have a variety of skill sets within your course, like your students, but sizes. You have a guy that might be 6'5", 300 pounds, maybe a little bit off, but then you also have a female that's maybe 5'2" and 115 pounds. Now, will you mold your courses based on not only someone's size, but maybe level of experience as well?
So what we talk about with that is that's all going to be off of your personal preferences, your skill set dictates, and then other variables or factors, which is size, those types of things. So principle one for EFC is awareness. Under that is build anticipation. What is awareness? Realistically, it can be multiple things, but some of the things we talk about is just human behavior. If I'm arresting someone, bad guys do the same thing every time. They do the same 5 things if they're stomach down. So if I know what those 5 things are, the game is slowed down for me. I know a route to anticipate all 5 of those things. And that's why arresting guys is actually fairly easy once you understand it. Principle 2 is movement. in police work, movement is life. There are positions in jiu-jitsu and wrestling that are dominant positions in MMA and the cage that are not good for police work, because I look at curriculum as, if it fails, where's my officer at? Okay. And if my officer isn't in a neutral or better position, then I don't teach that position, no matter how good it is in the sport. And the reason is we don't have size differences in sport. We have weight classes. And then we also don't have referees, and we don't have just one suspect. We have a bunch of unknown environments that we fight in. So we say movement is life. Principle 2 is movement. That leads into principle 3, which is distance management. Double-edged sword. You have to be able to engage or disengage, and neither of them are wrong. Each officer has that preference. My tactical advantage on someone may be to engage them if I'm close and control that and fight for them to not get their weapon out. Where if it's a bigger suspect, I might still feel comfortable doing that just because of my level of training. Where I can't expect a 135-pound male or a 130-pound female to maybe attack a 6-foot, 220-pound male that's high on drugs. If he starts to reach, their tactical advantage or their best tactic might be to disengage. But now, how do we do that? What angles do we disengage to? Where do we go? Now, if we can't disengage because we're in a small room, confined space, congested space, whatever that might be, how do I win angles, which is principle 4, winning the angle to give me the best position to attack this guy? If the position fails, I'm not in a bad position that could be detrimental, right? And then principle 5 is just improvising. You got to problem solve all that. So like, I never tell people they should engage or disengage. It's not wrong to do either. Are there times where I think one is better than the other? Absolutely, of course. But that all depends on the officer's skill level, their ability to process, how far into that process are they, or their recognition versus the suspect's actions, and then disengaging. But if you disengage, where are you going? What are your options? How are you moving? Okay. Because if we're going to disengage and go straight backwards, most of the time we're going to fall on our butt. We're going to be slow. They're going to be coming forward and closing the space. So how do we properly move now? So moving isn't really defensive tactics or control tactics, but it's a combatives factor in a fight. So we teach a lot of moving and getting to tools, less lethals, getting to lethals, now transferring between them. When we say we should be hands-on skills versus the tools, or dependent on hands-on skills versus the tools, it's more we should be dependent on our verbal and hands-on skills, and then we should be backed by and assisted by our tools. Now, the reason I say that is the overwhelming majority of people we arrest is because we cooperatively talk them into getting cuffed without ever fighting with that person. If you look at all police arrests, most of them are done cooperatively. The next stage then is actively resisting. The person isn't trying to fight us, like as far as be combative towards us or injure us. They're just trying to not get arrested. They're tensing up, tucking their arms, or trying to flee. Okay. That is usually a hands-on solve. Okay. That's an overwhelming amount of force that we use. Then we'll come to the actively combative guy. That could be solved with our hands-on. That could be solved with less lethal skills. And then we have our deadly physical force situations, which are our gun. And that is the lowest amount of force we ever use in police work. So if I go directly to tools on an actively resistant or actively combative person, and that taser fails, then I go to pepper spray or baton and that fails, then I don't have another option. If I don't have any hands-on skills, I have to go up to lethal force, and I might not be able to do that yet, or it might be very difficult for me to articulate why I did that. Okay.
Yep.
Where if I have a hands set on skill problems, maybe the guy's fists are up and I'm like, okay, I could go to taser first here. I don't need to attempt to go hands-on. And I go to taser, but what if my taser fails there? Can I necessarily shoot that guy? And in some cases, it's probably not, right? Especially if there's maybe the cop's bigger than the suspect, maybe whatever. So then now if I don't have hands-on skills, they're lost in this transition of where do I go? I'm not saying you have to go hands-on before getting to your taser every time. What I'm saying is if you can articulate why you're going to your taser versus hands-on, that's fine. But when your taser fails and you can't go to lethal force, what options are you left with now? Now, if
Yep.
you have really good hands-on tactics or team tactics, right? Bring a couple people and we cheat and we know where to work together. We're just way more beneficial. I do this, what I call like an unofficial study in every course that I teach now. And I'll tell people, okay, raise your hand if you, and I'll first preface this with law enforcement only, okay? Not if you were deployed. So we have a lot of military veterans that are deployed and they've used lethal force much more than they ever have in the police world. Okay. So law enforcement only. Raise your hand in here if you've tased more than 5 people. And you'll get 3 or 4. Let's say the average class is 30. Maybe 3 or 4 people tase more than 5 people. Raise your hand in here if you pepper sprayed more than 5 people. Usually that's about the same. A lot of times I have correction guys in my course, and those guys are definitely pepper spraying more than 5 people in their career, probably because that's just what their number one tool is in there. Yeah. Then I'll say, raise your hand if you've hit more than 5 people with your baton. I haven't had anyone that has hit more than 5 people with their baton ever in these
Yep.
courses, right? And then I'll say, raise your hand in here if you've shot more than 5 people. I've never had anyone raise their hand. Okay. And civilian policing, if you've shot more than 5 people, you're probably a sniper on a really busy SWAT team, or maybe you're, you know, this could happen, but the likelihood of it is very, very, very minimal. Raise your hand in here if you've gone hands on and fought with someone resisting. Everybody in the class raises their hand.
Yep.
Right. So, like, what are we doing the overwhelming majority of the time on the street, but we put the least amount of skill and training into it? It doesn't make sense. We are 100% a verbal and hands-on profession, and we are assisted by these tools. Now, when we need these tools, need to be very proficient and good with them. I'm not saying take training away from them. I'm saying we need to integrate these things together and understand what level of training they all take. But where right now in profession are we absent with the most training? And it's what we do the most after verbal fails.
Yeah. So I like that because I was big in verbal communication on this. I had plenty of rolling around and physical, altercations with suspects, but it was far and few between because I love communication, and that is your first line of defense is being able to efficiently communicate with somebody. Next, I just wanted to ask you. I have so many questions. You even mentioned it yourself. The likelihood of getting into firearms is what you said within 7 feet, low light, and usually around a vehicle. Is that correct? Somewhere around there.
Yeah,
So,
so most shootings, the highest percentage of shootings are right now are 0 to 7 feet, low light conditions around vehicles.
so it's an obvious question. I think I've seen you do some training, but a lot of it is in the classroom. Do you emphasize or have a slot for like vehicle extraction or the dealing with suspects around vehicles as well?
Yeah, so in level one, we talk about vertical pinning as well. That could be on a wall, but that could also be on a car. We're around vertical settings all the time. There are times where I don't want to go to the ground. I'm solo and there's 2 or 3 suspects, and I don't know if they're going to be bystanders or if they're going to jump in when I have to fight with this guy. So staying vertical and pinning them on the walls. So those vertical wall pins are both in level one, but we we teach in our vehicle extraction. So our level two is a bit different than most combatives or DT programs. Our level two is a reality based training program. We build out structured reality based training box drills for the students and soon to be instructors, how to do them safely, those types of things. And then day 4 of that course is vehicle extractions. It's all vehicle extractions. Now, getting someone out of the vehicle is the easy part. And if it's unopposed by weapons, even if it fails, it's still okay, not super dangerous as long as all the safety is in place. So we start out by, hey, we don't even reach in cars unless a car is immobilized. You've blocked it in, the keys are out of the car, whatever the case may be. A crash, it's against a tree, and the airbags are up. You're not reaching into a car to extract a guy if that car can get mobile. Safety rules number one. The internet is great for you. I would never reach into that car. I could drive away. So like what I do now, and all the guys that come to my courses will like DM me right away. And so I always take the keys of the car and I put them on the roof right above the driver's seat where we're working, because I want people at like make that comment on the internet. I'll be like, well, officers are also supposed to be observant and the keys are on the hood or the keys are on the roof. and I'll
Yeah,
circle it in
exactly.
red, right? We've
Yep,
already
yep, yep.
talked about these safety conditions. We're not reaching into cars if it can get mobile.
Yeah.
Then the next stage is how do we just work as a team to extract a guy out of a car? Really, extracting a guy out of a car solo is probably not the best case of action. There are exceptions, and we'll show like the exception of how you could do that, but it's way more dangerous than what we like to be like. Wait for your backup. What's the hurry? Okay, and then we work in teams of two. A third guy could come in and be a cover guy. There's multiple places to put that cover guy. You could leave him, you can move him. There's a whole bunch of uh, ways that we show. We show for patrol, path of least resistance is to the rear because they're not going to train a lot, and that's the way they're going to move. Okay, different teams and elements of movement can be trained if you have more time together with the same guys. But I tell people like pulling a guy out of the car is the easy part if you have two officers. If it fails and it's unopposed to weapons, it's still easy. Okay, we didn't get him out of the car. All right, we wait for somebody else to get there. Maybe we have a bigger, stronger guy that can help us, a more skilled guy, or we just hold it as a high risk vehicle stop at that point and then call them out. Where it gets dangerous is when that vehicle extraction or somewhere during the approach to that traffic stop becomes opposed by a weapon. Okay. And I've actually changed how I work the second guy's control about 3 years ago now, because the trend of watching body cam videos, which is the brilliant thing about body cam videos, is we see the trends of suspects. Okay. The trend is they're not even trying to present their weapon during the extraction until they're halfway out or out of the car. Okay. So now, how do I minimize that to not even allow them to do that? Okay. So a lot of these guys aren't drawing or trying to present the weapon until they're already in the extraction, which basically makes the cover guy useless if you put him in the A pillar because you got your guys already in there fighting and they're connected. So that's
Mhm.
another issue that we talk about. Well, do we leave them there or do we move them once they start working it? Because unless they can disengage, this guy's useless or it becomes a crossfire. Okay. So we changed to our second guy winning the near side underhook versus double head clinch. So again, yeah, it's opposed to weapons there. How do we deal with that? Are we staying engaged? What's the communication on then getting a contact shot in a confined space with a partner next to his head, which is never trained? Everyone's like, just contact shot, contact shot. Okay, but if you and I are fighting and I'm the suspect and you're fighting me and your head's next to mine, do you want me just running up trying to, well, let's see how this goes today? Right? Like we have to
No.
train how we're moving that head offline or driving that head offline to have the proper angle for it not to be next to your head. So we walk through all of those things. We let them work it with some pressure. We let those guys come out when they don't know they're going to come out. If they're going to have a weapon, not have a weapon. Is it a knife? Is it a gun? How are they handling it? So we start crawling it. We walk it all unopposed to weapons, just the extractions. Then we talk about the movements. Here's some options. And then we let them go and do it with some pressure testing. We use cert guns primarily for that because the guys don't want to get geared up all again. They were geared up for 2 days with UTMs and marking rounds already. But the cert guns are great because you can actually get trigger presses. You can see if you're making your hits, if you're getting hit, is it a knife, those types of things. So the vehicle extraction module for us is taught day 4 of level 2, and that's all in the car and around the car.
Is there a psychology or a theory behind why it's believed that these suspects are not presenting until either on their way out or when they're completely out? Do you have any thoughts on that? It's kind of weird that that's a common
So
theme.
obviously I spend tons of time breaking down videos, and vehicle extractions for the most part are all occurring with patrol units. So very little, like say you're on a street crimes unit or maybe a drug task force or a SWAT team and you're doing a vehicle interdiction takedown or something. It's a briefed event. So it's already briefed. You guys all train together. You know what everyone's roles are. What is the difference with patrol? It's a spontaneous event. You're working with 1 or 2 people that maybe are from your shift. Maybe it's from the neighboring agency. Maybe it's a trooper stop to assist you or you stop to assist a trooper. You're on different pages. So how can you just communicate between 2 people extremely easy to get this vehicle extraction out to where you limit his ability to access a weapon at all? I think the psychology for the suspect behind it, because I always try to think like the bad guy is, they're just trying to keep it hidden to the last second. Maybe they don't think they're getting arrested, or maybe like as they're coming out, they're going to either try to get rid of it or this is when they feel the officer is most exposed. versus when they're sitting in the car and the officers are more upright, using the B pillars cover, those types of things. So I don't know for sure because I'm not a psychologist, obviously, but just watching trends, they're waiting to the last minute to present that weapon right now. If you look at the Blue County, or not Blue County, yeah, I think it's Blue County, Tennessee. There's 4 or 5 really good videos from the last 2 or 3 years where cops get shot or the bad guy gets a gun and shoots at them, and all those videos, minus the Fairfax County one, the guy's getting extracted. The Fairfax County one that just came out, the guy was carrying it, and it was unchambered, but the door was closed. So these other ones, the door's already open and they're extracting. So the difference here is the Fairfax County one, the door's closed, and the cop actually sees him reach for a gun, but he tries to go through the window. Now he's got a barrier of the door, so he can't really control the gun. There's too much space. The guy actually gets the gun up and running and gets some rounds out, and another officer shoots through. And that was a pretty close crossfire issue as well because they're on opposite sides of the car, which is another complete controversial topic of opposite side approaches. Bullets do weird things in cars, and even if we're high elbow shooting down in, like we still see bullets come out. So it's like being on the same side for sure on extractions is our standpoint, because I want both guys on the same side. We're getting a gunfight. Our guns are pointing in the same direction. We're not in a crossfire, those types of things. But it's how do we eliminate him from presenting in there? If we're going to extract him, our immediate controls should be taking away his ability to present anything, or at least highly minimizing his ability to do so. So the first guy will come up, he'll split the door into the A-frame. Second guy is B pillar. He actually works the near side arm at the same time he's working the near side arm of the car. The second guy is then working a head post and an underhook, going to a shoulder pull. Because now if he's got an underhook on this arm and this arm's against the B pillar, what am I presenting a weapon with when I'm coming out? Nothing, because I occupy all inside spaces. So we have had to switch that a little bit because we used to have the second guy go right to the head clinch. But then the inside arm, which is most people's right side arm, where a weapon is going to be presented with or from, to the right of the driver's seat, center console between the seat or his person, is that right arm. So attacking that right arm with an underhook or a pin is just a necessity now.
Huh. That's very interesting. So one of my final questions is, do you have any plans or currently or in the future of implementing like a canine portion of this? A lot of times, specifically in like higher city areas where canines are deployed more rapidly, a lot of regular, because I was a canine guy, a lot of regular patrol officers or troopers, whatever you want to call them, aren't familiar with how to work around dogs and how to take somebody into custody around dogs, because sometimes a dog is needed for the actual making contact,
Sure.
and sometimes a dog is just needed for just in case. So are there any plans to, probably not a high priority, but has there been any talks about implementing canine extractions as a part of the program?
Yeah, it'll be a custom based course. We've already done it with a bunch of different canine units, putting it in. I have two of my really good friends. One of the guys that was on my team came up through him through SWAT and patrol, and even in the undercover unit. Um, I'm going to lean on him a lot more for an in-depth type custom course build. And the guy he works with, he just retired, but they hired him back just to train the canines because that's like, you ever hear of Mitchell's Law in New York?
Yes. I'm not
So
familiar with the inside out of it, but I heard of it. Yeah.
yeah, so Mitchell was a dog. Eric was his handler. The dog got stabbed through the neck, and it was basically like a misdemeanor charge. It was on like a barricaded suspect, and so they had petitioned to have that be a felony if you injure a dog with a weapon. So I have Eric to lean on. Eric's a phenomenal handler. He goes up and works in the Onondaga area with Craig as well, who runs a lot of the courses there. So our idea and how we show it in the custom based course, and I know Eric has some ideas of his own, and we have a couple other guys in the Charleston area with my partner. His best friend is a canine cop, a really seasoned canine cop. When we've done it and we talked about is the dog is going to be just another guy on the team. Okay. But the handler is in charge of the call. So let's look at our 3-man team tactics. We segment the body. Okay. Takedown is high, low, one officer high, one officer low. It meets the same concept of the taser, right? You want to split the hemisphere to get the most NMI to control a human body. We want to split the hemisphere as well. So one guy's high, one guy's low, and then the third guy comes in and controls the head or the shoulders, depending on the environment. Okay. So if you look at those 3 positions, if the dog is launched, he's going to be the contact officer initially. Okay. If he goes to the arm, that would be the contact person. That would be the contact officer. The canine handler then will come in, secure his position with the dog, and then he will communicate the guy to go low and the guy to go high. Okay. Then he'll take the dog off. And the reason being is what we're finding is people used to get bit by the dog and they would give up. Now with all the drugs on board, people get bit by the dogs and they're still fighting, or they say they're done. And then when we take the dog off, they start fighting again. So let's get our points of control in before we take the dog off on a bite. So dog gets bite, canine officer comes in, secures his position between the dog and wherever he's going to put the other 2 anchor positions. Then, so say the dog's on the arm, first person coming in will go to the legs and secure the legs with some sort of anchor position. Then he will come and go to the third guy will come up and go to the head, post on the head. And then the officer that's going to be taking over the canine officer and the handler's position is going to be waiting. Once he takes the dog off, then he'll move in and take that position away. Now, if the dog went low and was on the leg, obviously the canine handler get between the dog and the torso. Then the second officer will come in and take over torso control, head, and then when we take him off the legs, the third officer would end up going to the legs and controlling the legs. So it's just working with the canine officer is going to be in control of the situation because it's his dog and he's going to not call those guys in until he's comfortable having them come in. And then where are those guys going strategically off of the placement of where the dog is going? So that way you're getting at least 2 pins on the suspect prior to taking the dog off. And then the third pin would come in.
Yeah, so it sounds like you have not only talked about it, but you have a pretty decent program intact. That's pretty awesome.
I'll send you a few videos.
Yeah, I would love that. Lastly, I've been doing a lot of these interviews. Most recently, I told you a guy from Atlanta, Georgia. I had another guy from our agency. We talked about evoc and driving, and the overall overwhelmingly it came to the training and what not only our departments lack, and I don't know, it's not a dig on a department, especially for like the state police. I know they're really scared of I think you called it is like liability issues, but like we need more training, and for someone like you to have this on a platform where not only do you have pretty much shoot to nuts what you need, but then I didn't even realize you had continuing education. In other words, like you have the app, you have the website. So if someone needs a refresher, they have that to go back to and recall and be, oh yeah, that's right. And then additionally, just follow up and do that training. And again, whether it's I know it's a big aspect of our job. Driving is very important to evoc, and just getting in some training courses. I just love the fact that you have that website available for people to follow up afterwards. Do they also have the ability? I know you said you have a team of 12. Do the people that go to your course have the ability to like reach out to you afterwards and kind of like, hey, this is what I've been through. Do you have any suggestions on something that maybe you didn't cover? Because I think you said it in one of your videos, like you could teach a million different things, but there's always going to be something that's going to be new that presents itself, a different suspect, a different environment or whatever. So do you have that ability? Someone going, hey, Jay, this is what I came up with. What do you think?
Yeah, so any of the guys that work for me know if they're not going to build relationships with the students and the hosts, then they're not going to work for me very long. So I think one of the big things, besides obviously the content, the way it's delivered and it's retained, as far as the program and the experience of all the instructors, it's just the relationships that we build with everyone that we're around. I spend probably 60 hours a week on my phone answering DMs, sending them back things. Hey, I get tons of videos that like I wish I could share them all. Because if I could share them all, it's such good content, but like their departments won't release good content. Hey, let's be transparent, but only show high levels of force Okay. Or when officers do something bad, instead of how often are we just going out there and we're crushing a situation and nobody got hurt and we're not showing that? Why are we so apt to show good content? Like we're training society to only see us be transparent when it's bad or a shooting, right? Like so Boulder just released one the other day. It's on my page. If you go look at it, they had 2 officers show up as they're approaching the guy. One of the things we talk about awareness, blade away, elbow peak, the 45. He was close. He went to one of our trapped arm body locks, takes the guy down. He doesn't know it's a knife at the time. He just sees him presenting something. He was close enough. He engaged. If he would have disengaged, that would have been a good tactic as well. But he engaged to partner with him. He wins inside control on both wrists. Guy can't get whatever it's out. During the fight, he's communicating with the partner and the suspect really calmly. The guy says he's going for a knife. The partner comes in, pummels in, takes one wrist control, pulls the knife out. They throw it to the side because the environment is like a parking ramp. There's no one else around. And then they get him into custody, right? So Boulder actually posts this on their page and say, hey, our officers had a situation where a guy went for a knife on them and they used good training from EFC to actually not get injured or injure the suspect. Now, could they have disengaged? Of course. Would we have said anything if they disengaged? No, because that is an option as well. And we teach that on knives. A lot of times on knives, we want to disengage, right? But they
Yeah.
had such good control once they understood it was a knife. The guy wasn't going anywhere and he was so pinned, he couldn't even get it out. So they decided to stay, which is probably the right decision. Because if they disengage after such good control and now they try to go to, you know, guns out and verbal control, if that guy runs at them, then they have to shoot the guy, right? So it worked out great for them. But they posted that and it's like, hey, these are the types of videos we need to get society to see that are happening every day, not just
Yeah.
when we shoot somebody or when it's an overuse of force. Like those are very few and far in between. Unfortunately, that's all we post, so that's all they know.
Yeah, well, you know why? You know why? It's because that's what gets all the likes and the shares, and that's what makes everything
Yeah,
goes viral. Because it makes the police officers look unprofessional and like they don't know how to do their job. I'm
yeah.
100% in agreement with you on, you know, a swift and efficient arrest or taking somebody into custody is boring, but that's what we should be showing because that's what we do on a daily basis. I say we. I keep on saying we. I guess I'm
I
lost in that, but
I
like
say that
it
all
is
the
what it
time,
is. It is.
and to answer your original question on that is, yeah, I get videos from people that would be like, "Hey, I did this and it worked, but it was here. How can I be better?" Sometimes it's like, "How do we problem solve this? This happened, and like we don't talk about it." Or like, for instance, Michigan State Police put out in November their officer. He was 6 weeks off of training, 6 weeks off of FTO. He's a blue belt in jiu-jitsu that probably saved his life, but the jiu-jitsu probably got him in a little bit of trouble as well, just because like he's so used to the sport position of it, stayed too long, right? But we always talk about when inside control, and don't chase their hands because their hands don't hurt you. But in this case, the revolver falls out of the guy's waist while they're fighting, and the guy reaches for it. So now the guy has to go over top and chase the hands because if he doesn't chase the hands, he's not going to be able to get to him from the inside.
Yeah.
But when you chase the hands, he stayed on the guy's back. Well, the guy ended up getting a base up, and the officer ended up on the bottom, and they're fighting for this revolver. The officer stays calm, does a good job of sweeping him in jujitsu, but when he sweeps him, the gun comes across, catches him twice in the vest and once in the shoulder. Comes
Shit.
up on top of the guy, calm as can be. Kid's got ice in his veins, does a phenomenal job. Still is pinning the revolver, not the guy's wrist, the revolver, because that way he get and ends up getting his gun out and shooting him and ending the threat, right? Um, most cops probably get killed in that situation, right? And this kid's 6 weeks
Absolutely.
off of training. But
Yeah.
I was asked the question of you say, don't chase the hands, don't chase the hands. Well, what's the exception? Okay, so yesterday I broke down the video. All right, if we can't get to it from the inside, which would be our number one choice, this is the exception of chasing the hands. There's no always and never in police work, right? Because that's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's just not good words to use. If we're going to chase over the top, we have to dismount the back because we can pin the gun, dismount to the side, and then we can actually access our own firearm without getting high. So again, I'm constantly getting those things, but I'm also constantly like researching and breaking down for better solutions and options. And here's the thing, there's no magic pill out there. There's no magic move that solves every single thing that we do. Okay. It's understand the skills, understand the principles and concepts of the position you're in. And then you have to improvise and add a tactic. You have to be a problem solver. That's how we teach. And that's how you're going to be good is be the problem solver. And to do that, you got to know the principles, concepts, and you got to have some skills.
I like that. I want, before we end, and I'm not rushing you, I'll go as long as you want, but before we end, I also want to ask you, for a regular patrol officer, trooper, sheriff, whoever, local guy, it doesn't matter. If they don't have a background in any one discipline, whether that be wrestling, MMA, or boxing, in your opinion, what's the most important um, attribute to have as a road guy or girl in policing now, like a base? Do you think it should be wrestling? Because that's something I never did. I was a basketball football guy, and I don't ever want to say I have a regret, but I kind of in a way regret never wrestling, because when you go with a wrestler, it's a different, when somebody knows how to move, like control
Yeah.
bodies and stuff, it's a whole different world. So do you have a suggestion on your regular guy or girl that's never been in anything on what they should first consider as a base or a
Yeah.
starting
First and
point?
foremost, fitness is the foundation of everything. If we're not fit, we're going to be out of shape in 10 seconds. It doesn't matter how, if you could take the best wrestler in the world and then don't let him wrestle for 1 year, okay, cardiovascular wise, and then put him against a wrestler that's been wrestling for a whole year, that guy's going to lose. Why? Because it's just cardio makes a coward out of all of us. So, one, we have to be physically conditioned. But then after that, some sort of grappling. Um, and here's, I umbrella jujitsu, wrestling, judo. I umbrella it all as grappling. It's all the art of controlling a human being, just different rule sets. Okay.
Yep.
So where do I need? And I almost would lean more to saying like learn like MMA style grappling because we want to be on top, but the bad guy's going to be striking us. He's going to be going for weapons. I want that MMA style of grappling. And here's the thing. I know tons and tons of people since 2009, 2012 that don't go to a wrestling or jujitsu or MMA gym, but have trained the combative system monthly, quarterly. Now they're out on the street making those arrests, getting the active resistance, the active combatives, getting the live reps, and they're super efficient. And they never have stepped into a jujitsu or wrestling gym. Now, the fastest way to build your skills is go find an MMA or jujitsu gym because wrestling gyms, realistically, after you turn adult, there's not many
Yep.
clubs. So
Yep.
go find an MMA gym or a jujitsu style gym that does train on their feet and a lot of top control. And then that's the fastest way to build your skills. If that's not for you, then understand the skills that we use all the time in those sports and train those skills integrated into the combative system. And that's where I have videos and videos of people from my old department that I can't get released of females who get rode the hardest on the internet. Have a group, and it's specifically two that are constantly getting in fights and working together against guys, and they're just dominating these guys because they understand where to go, how to talk, how to communicate, and they don't train jujitsu or wrestling. They understand the system, they've trained the skills long enough, and then they understand the principles and concepts, and they're crushing it, right? So you don't have to be a black belt in jujitsu to be good at combatives. You have to spend time in building skills and understanding the fight that you're in.
Very good. I love that. So what's Jay's I don't know if you have not a New Year's resolution. What's your goals here for 2026 with effective fitness combatives?
One, we're rolling out our combative SWAT program. So there's plenty of dudes in the CQB lane that are really high level and good. Not that we're not super good at that as well. We are, but there's plenty of people in that lane. There's plenty of people in the long gun shooting, rifle range, SWAT range style shooting. Not that we're not really good. We're really good there, but there's plenty of people in that lane. Where we saw the downfall in your SWAT schools is the hands on um, portion, the weapon manipulation, swinging it, fighting with a long gun on now is your primary tool, vertical pinning, those types of things, working in a team setting with kit on. Hey, calling people out of hallways as far as like that is verbal control. We point our guns at people all the time and don't shoot them. We take them into control because they're being cooperative at a high use of force. We're pointing our guns at them and we use verbal control to bring them back. How do we do that safely, bringing them back to the arrest team, those type of things? So we're going to roll that out this year, and I'm pretty excited for that. So
That's awesome. All right. So if anybody that watches this podcast is interested in your course or one of your seminars or anything that you have to offer, how would they access that? I can share stuff, but if they're listening and they want to access your information on how to go to a seminar or a course, how do they do that?
yeah, efcombatives.com is our website. You can log in there and you can, or just go to there and you can sign up for level 1 or level 2 courses. They're both on the website. There's a form to, if you want to host. Hosting locations for 2026 are closed. We don't have any more host locations unless it's a private course. Registrations for all those courses are open. If it's a private course, it's just not on the website. Same with level 2. Okay. To host level 2 or to come to level 2, though, level 1 is a prereq. So you have to have level 1 to come to level 2. And then any custom-based course is just fill out the host or contact us form, and it'll come directly to our admin who will funnel it to me, and we'll build out whatever they want. We do some active shooter stuff for a lot of church security groups. We do those as well. And then we have the SWAT Combatives course, which will be up there as well. Our handles are EF Combatives. That's both on Instagram and YouTube. I also have a portion of ownership in Police Posts. So if you follow Police Posts and the Police Post YouTube, and then my personal one's WADSBJJ, that is also a YouTube as well, or Instagram. And if you want to get a hold of me, probably DMing me on my personal page or shooting me an email at my work email is jay@efcombatives.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jay. How many, do you know how many classes or seminars you have scheduled for 2026? You said a lot of
Yeah,
them are booked.
we
Go
have,
ahead.
so the host locations are booked, the registrations are opened, which means
Okay.
people can still register for the majority of the classes.
Hmm.
Just we aren't taking any more hosts for 2026. I'm already booking the host locations for 2027. There's 72 courses for 2026.
Okay.
And they're all on the website. So you can go to the website, look for your location, or if you want to go to a cool destination, and you can either pay by credit card or request an invoice right on the website. And then if you are interested in hosting an open course, which means open to other law enforcement, you can also make that open to law enforcement, military, and security. And then we do have an approved civilian ones like jiu-jitsu instructors that are teaching cops. We can approve them if the host wants us to. And those registrations are all open. And you can just find those on the website. If you want a custom course or a private course, hit me up. And we do have availability to put those in more in 2026, just because those are going to be private courses and we don't have to worry about filling them.
Okay. Last question, in regards to a specific course, what does your, typically, how many students do you have in a class, would you say?
So
Is there a limit? Is there a
our
limit?
minimum is 20. Our biggest class has been 68.
Okay.
So
Do you,
customs run the same too. They got to be a minimum of 20. If your facility for level 1 holds 80 people and you put 80 people in, I just bring more instructors. We carry
okay.
a 12 to 1 student to instructor ratio. So if you have a bigger class, you're not going to only have 1 or 2 instructors. You'll have a lot of instructors there. And then the California courses have a little bit different instructor ratio, but we just abide by what their post does.
Awesome. All right, Jay, thank you very much for your time. All my listeners, thank you for listening. Please continue to share, like, comment, follow, do all that good stuff, and hop on and check out Jay's stuff. He has some legit stuff here. Thank you so much, Jay. I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, sir.